Hi. How you guys doing? I hope you had an amazing week. I hope you did. Weekend's coming. It's coming fast. Coming fast and hard. And I hope you guys are ready for it. I'm ready for it. For me, it's the middle of my week. It's technically like my work Wednesday, and I'm off on Fridays, and I have to work 2 days, and then take a day off, and I have 2 days. A little long shifts. I actually took a day off this week. Took a mental health day. I says, "Oh, first it's Godzilla, now a different monster. Run!" Ah, whoops. Oh, it's just Jim. I get it though. I do need to trim the beard. It's getting out of control. Bad. Like I was eating yesterday, and the mustache was getting inside my mouth, and I was pulling my lip down when closing my mouth. You know, it was pretty bad. Pretty bad. It's all right though. I'll survive.
I will survive.
Fine. I took a mental health day on Wednesday. I just was not with it. I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna run the risk of taking out my weird mood on some hapless customer. I will just do nothing. And I did. I did nothing. I watched a lot of YouTube. Um, I see a sexy cat next to the cup. Oh, the Garfield. Yeah. I was like, first of all, Brim's on here. Second of all, Brim's not sexy. He's a jerk off. I'm like, none of my cups are on camera. And I look, I see what he's doing. I'll get it now. How you doing, Adam? Welcome back to the stream, pal. Good to see you. Um, so I decided that what I'm going to start doing to lower the pressure of figuring out topics and whatnot is to kind of theme out the show a little bit. So for the foreseeable future, and Troy probably knows that I say that shit a lot, and then shit changes like the next week. But I think I want to keep the metal, the guide to metal on Fridays, and I want to keep the more cerebral topics, the more psychological stuff, like the stuff that a lot of people call them fireside chats. That's going to be Mondays, and then Tuesdays for the day for the I don't know. I think that'll be whatever, and then the evening streams will always be gameplay focused unless we have a guest or something. I think Monday will be flexible for like the discussion thing, as far as like usually it'll be at the early show will be the talk unless we have a guest lined up, and then that may be in the evening depending upon their availability. I think that'll work out great. And then on Fridays we'll have these metal discussions. That way you guys have a better idea of what to expect, when to be here if you want to, participate in that sort of thing. And in almost every case there will be gameplay followed up after a discussion. Today certainly being no exception. Though it may be short in the sense that Bennett Fiasco is having this rambling gaming weekend, and he really wants to play some Destiny with me. I haven't touched Destiny in weeks, and I thought, well, I believe it's in the evening is when he's available to do that. So we may throw the old stream on so you guys can hear some old school fire team shenanigans as we play PvP and do random other things and whatnot. It'll be nice. It'll be fun. We'll see. Because I'm trying to provide structure to the show without being confining and putting pressure on myself to create content where there is none. Adam says, "I'm here if I see you live. Somehow I didn't get to see you." Jimmy says, "Garfield, all the watch." Okay, I got you. I mean, it happens, dude, and and sometimes it's a bit sporadic around here. It's not too bad. Once in a while, I'll be like, ah. So like Tuesday, I ended up streaming late because I was just not with it at all. And that mood kind of spilled over into Wednesday, which is why I took the mental health day. But that's the thing, man. You gotta be able to say when too much is too much, and I was definitely I just wasn't able to deal. So I just said, nah, I need to just take a day and kind of reset myself. So that's exactly what I fucking did. It will never not weird me out. They call this white cherry. It doesn't look like anything you should be putting in your body. It just looks like filthy water. And it is filthy with awesomeness. Yeah, cloudy water, sure. But I decided I wanted a different flavor. Here's something some of you will appreciate. Yesterday, for the first time since well before Christmas, I bought a 6-pack of beer and I only drank half of it in the first sitting. Normally, when I get a 6-pack, that 6-pack's gonna be gone. Last night, didn't happen. Didn't happen. Thought I drilled from some alien movie. Yeah, it's not thick enough for that. That's KY jelly. That's a whole other discussion. Whole other discussion, dude. But yeah, I only had 3 beers out of it, and I drew it out over like a couple hours, which is very odd for me. But not a thing wrong with it either way. But I found it very interesting. So I was like, okay, and I'm glad that I did that. I had a good night. There are some nights where you just want to, and some nights where you don't want to do that. And I didn't make a conscious effort either way. I bought the same amount of beer I always buy, and technically less because normally I'll buy a 6-pack of like 16-ounce talls. Well, I bought a 6-pack of bottles, which are 12 ounces. So not only did I drink half the 6-pack, but each beer was less. So if you do the math, so there's 4 ounces missing from each of those beers. You put that times 3. It's like a whole beer less than half of the other one. So if I drank half of a 16-ounce 6-pack or half of a 12-ounce 6-pack, the 16-ounce 6-pack is like drinking 4 regular beers. I only had 3. And here's the real kicker: it had less alcohol content in it too. Normally I drink a 5.9. This was like a 4.4. So it was like very interesting, Mr. Anderson kind of moment. Exactly. Exactly. So I just I went to bed and I realized, oh man, okay, whatever. It wasn't a huge deal, but I felt it was noteworthy for myself because I had a switch had flipped in the old brain. Now whether or not that stays, I don't know. Adam's like, I don't know you and your American system. It's true. We call it imperial, and granted, that's pretty American, but you know. You know. So, lowered alcohol intake, mental health days, and scheduling brouhaha aside, today we are talking about the next episode of the Grindhead's Guide to Metal. And there were some things I was talking to JT Corpse last night and during his stream, which is getting really good, by the way. You need to check him out. About the fact that I forgot to mention the Transformers the movie soundtrack in my how I got in the metal. Like that was a huge part of it, really. Because in '87, the same year I was introduced to, like Napalm at the end, like right smack in the middle of the summer, the Transformers soundtrack came out, and it was like this blend of synth wave, and the score had a lot of synth in it, but the bands was deliciously like unabashed kind of hair metal, but still kind of raw. Like they still had some bite to them, and it was like this nice place where everything I loved about music came into one thing. The first animated Transformers film is my favorite film ever, and the soundtrack's a big part of that. It's so good, Troy. It's so good. And it was one of these things where like everything just kind of was like the eye of the storm for me, right? And ever since then, like you can kind of look at all the different things that are in that soundtrack and kind of trace where all my musical love would go. Like to this day, I love a good synth pop or synth wave, good synthesizer rock driven song like Gunship and the Midnight and Dance the Dead. There's a bunch of bands that did that. And Tears for Fears, which I was already listening to a lot at the time, it just kind of fit right in there, and Queen fits right in there, and so on and so forth. And I feel like I've had a discussion with people, and Troy's heard me say this drunkenly like probably 36 times at this point in our friendship, but Songs from the Big Chair, Tears for Fears' album. Oh, I'm getting to that, Troy. Songs from the Big Chair, Tears for Fears album. I think it was their second or third album, but it's their most popular, inarguably. It is one of the most finely crafted death metal albums ever recorded. It just happens to be recorded with synthesizers. If you listen to the rhythms and the intensity and the delivery, it's very aggressive. It's very rhythmic. There's a lot of emotion there. And if you took those same notes and put them on death metal guitars and black metal guitars and changed the vocals and, changed the drum beats just a little bit, basically the bass structure of the song remain the same, those would be fucking metal songs. And I feel like you can do the same thing with metal songs and turn them into synthwave. I mean, that's been done over and over and over and over and proven over and over and over. So I feel like there's these two very disparate schools of thought when it comes to music that really, really blend together far more than either side is willing to admit most of the time. Occasionally you'll get a band like Gunship or Dance the Dead that just don't care. It's like, we want all of it. We just make it happen. And certainly those two thought processes go into something called industrial, which is not nearly as prevalent as it once was. 9 Inch Nails being the most notable example of it, who were very, very metal in the beginning, or Ministry, or Misery Loves Company, Bile, KMFDM, and then there's bands that go on and on and on. Rammstein would be an example, I think, on some level, where they combine like the more mechanized aspects of the synth movement and just shove metal into it and vice versa, right? So I think that's a big connection that I'd like to talk about today. Like, think about that. Metal and synth kind of existed on their own in the 80s, and they slowly came together, formed something called industrial, which kind of broke off. And now we're back to having like true metal and synthwave again. It's a whole thing. It's crazy. But they're all like equally valid, passionate forms of music, which I think is interesting. I really dig it. And for those of you listening live, there's Tears for Fears right there. This is an amazing example of what I'm talking about. So to kind of roll back to the beginning of the conversation, Troy had mentioned that Weird Al fits in there too. Absolutely, because he's there on that album. There was a song that came off of one of his other records, Dare to Be Stupid, but it was in the movie. It was on the soundtrack for Transformers, and he's his own thing. He'll do parodies. He'll do like genre parodies. He'll do like direct song parodies and stuff. And Dare to Be Stupid was kind of like this Devo thing, but it wasn't Devo. And he's a brilliant musician in his own right. But he was silly. He was goofy. And the thing is, I always had a thing after that for something that has a little bit of goof to it. Whether it's
all praise be to Grindzilla. Welcome to the Disciples. All praise be to Grindzilla. Welcome
Bike.
to the Disciples.
He said, nice conversation. Don't mean to interrupt, but 14 months. Just poof, Bicycle of Death just dropping it like it's hot. Because it is hot. Hot that he's here. And he's pretty hot. There's no question about that. Not watching Bicycle Death. You're doing Twitch wrong. It's a fact. Fact. The fucking back. Oh, here's something. I wonder if I can turn this on now. Let me see. Okay. I am currently running captions through OBS. Now, what I've been told, supposedly, is that it taps into the captions system in Twitch itself. I don't know how true that is. So those of you watching Twitch right now, oh, it is working. It is working. That's weird. So if you look at the options menu below, you'll see that there are captions going there on the screen, and you can kind of mess with them however you want. Now you can't mess with the setting, the placement or anything, but it is something that should be pretty cool. I will say that those captions are a lot slower, and they are probably a lot less accurate. But it is something you can turn off if you want to. So I'm gonna leave them on for the foreseeable future, and if I start to see them get better in some way, I'll eventually turn off the other captions. But I think the entire reason that the web captions exist is because one, it's a better engine, and two, you have a lot more freedom with it. So I wanted to bring that up before I forgot. I wanted to see if I could do it, and it is totally working, which is really cool. I did not think that was going to happen. I thought it was never going to work. So what we probably need to do, since we now know they work, we probably need to get the web caption folks with the OBS folks and have them just inject the engine that they're using and the settings that they're using right into OBS, and then pipe that up to the Twitch caption system. That would be an amazing thing. That would be an amazing thing, because then you could turn the captions on and off at will, and it'd be it. It'd be so good. Sorry, tangent. Their thing. You met me before. What we're doing. So with Weird Al, like, he kind of informed that silly sensibility, but was still serious music. Whether we're talking about Stormtroopers of Death, MOD, Guar, X Cops, fucking, the list goes on. There's a lot of silly metal out there, a lot of silly bands out there, and certainly there's an entire genre of just silly ass bands on YouTube, and I still appreciate all that stuff. So go figure. But you can trace it all back to that album, despite me having some roots in Metallica and having some roots in later that year, like grindcore and stuff. It always comes back to that blending of genre on the Transformers the movie soundtrack that it was like this catalyst that set everything off. It's like Metallica's over here, Tears for Fears is over here, hip hop's over there somewhere, and it just kind of all. So that's kind of like if I have a musical core, if I have a musical heart, so to speak, it's that album. And I don't know if anybody else I've ever met can really trace back to one record that kind of like set them off in all directions. And the reason that I say that is that most people that are into metal that I know, that are like really into it, tend, and this is a very blanket general statement, many of my close friends do not fit into this, but they tend to be so into metal that they ignore the stuff to the point of folly. Like, I still dig a good hip hop song, old school hip hop, mind you. I don't like the new stuff at all. I still love a good 80s pop song. I still love a good synthwave song. I'll even dig a good country song. Those are few and far between for me. But I love Johnny Cash. I love a good score. And I don't mean Hans Zimmer. I'm like, fuck that guy. Sorry. One trick pony. Even Danny Elfman has gotten to a point where he's not really putting out anything that's interesting. I would argue he hasn't put out anything remotely interesting musically since Nightmare Before Christmas or Mars Attacks. Those are the last two things he did where I was like, okay, cool. As soon as they tapped him for Spider-Man, it was like everything got generic, like super generic, and I'm just like, I don't care anymore. There's old themes you could pick out. Now it's just like, well, that's definitely Danny Elfman, but I don't care. Same with John Williams to a point. Probably after Jurassic Park, really. I mean, there's some cool stuff in the Star Wars soundtracks and the scores and so forth, but I don't know that. I don't know that he ever really kind of came back from. And to be fair, you're essentially writing the same genre pieces over and over and over again. Although you've got way more textures to mess with, when you've been doing something for 30 years in a certain way, it can be difficult creatively to kind of turn it and make it different, which is why I'm always so fascinated by this dichotomy in music where you got bass, guitar, drums, and vocals, and you get the same 4 or 5 guys in a room or even some rotating dudes, and you could make things that sound the same year over year, but still breathe something fresh into it. Yet you get a guy like John Williams who has, fucking 18 to 120 piece orchestras, and he's working with visually different material each time. And although he's got a signature stamp, you can know it's John Williams, but sometimes it sounds too samey, and I don't understand how that happens at all. I don't get that. You would think that this one dude could manipulate whatever he wants whenever he wants. But then I would go back to the whole band thing. JT Corpse bit cockying me with my own bit cocky. Give him a shout out. He had a Horned Norsken on his stream last night. It was very disruptive, but highly entertaining. My man. JT, we were just talking about how it's interesting that bands of 4 or 5 people with just bass, drums, guitar, and vocals can make something that is undeniably stylistically similar to what a band has done, but can bring something new each time, versus a guy like John Williams or Danny Elfman, who at a certain point, even though they have 120 piece orchestras in front of them, they have different visual medium to work with each time. But after a certain period of time, they just get really samey and not for the better. Whereas, like in some rock and metal circles, if you put out basically the same record every year, people would be happy. But it's this weird, I don't understand how that works. And we're talking about the synthwave, synthpop connection, which I all traced back to Transformers, the movie soundtrack from 1987. If you look at everything on that record, you can go, that's where Jim got this, that's where Jim got this, that's where Jim got this. It's true. It's true. And it's bit cocky. B-I-T. Troy says, personally speaking, the NES was a huge influence on me in blending of genres. Contra, Mega Man, and the TMNT2 soundtracks were 100% metal and chiptune synth form and are partially responsible for who I am today. Yeah. That's the thing. If you know anything about Troy, like, that's 100% true. Like, he almost doesn't have to tell you that for you to understand it. Like, it's just, oh, well, that's it. What is in my eye, dude? Oh, there's a cat hair in my glasses, and it's like this huge, gigantic tree limb in my field of vision has been bothering me. Fuck. Well, thank you. I'm glad you feel I have a point. Still don't like Harmony Corruption very much, but yes, I'm glad we can agree. Oh, I just like twisted the knife a little bit. Sorry, I'm a jerk. It's fine. It's fine. And now we got like, this is a good illustration too. We're listening to John Mayer live. I love John Mayer. Like, I have a thing against the dude. I think he's a great musician. I think he's got a good voice. They're good tunes. You know, like for me, it's like a slightly less pretentious Don Henley. And I like him better than Don Henley. The boys of summer. I don't give a shit about that. Nobody's perfect. Oh, God. But John Mayer's good, man. And I've caught some shit in this stream for liking John Mayer. People are like, "Oh, you like that shit?" I'm like, "How do you not like it?" You know. But that's the thing; it's personal taste, right? You know, I'm wearing a Deeds of Flesh shirt, a Napalm Death hat, which is all like, bleh. But I love this. I like the first Shakira record. Shoot me. You know what? Fuck you. I don't care. Good music's good music. Now, granted, most of the time, given the choice, I will reach out for some brutal metal most of the time. That's something I'm always mood wise ready to do. But I have all this other stuff in my repertoire that I can just pull out at a moment's notice and be happy. But I just don't reach out for it. It's weird. Like pardon me. I seldom sit down and listen to any hip hop anymore. But I love hip hop. Farron listens to hip hop, and anytime she puts it on, I'm like, all right, cool. And the kind of hip hop she likes appeals to me. You know, and even though she may not reach out to listen to brutal metal, most of the stuff I listen to, she's like, okay, this is good. It's an interesting crossover of interest, which I really dig. So that we can both be exposed to stuff without having to like it never gets to that point where it's like, ugh. To me, at least, it never has. I've never seen her roll her eyes. I've never rolled my eyes at her. JT says, I don't know anything about Mayer other than what he did on the Chappelle Show. Okay. I mean, that's kind of like I listened to him when this album came out in like 2001, 2002. And I got it. I liked it. And then I just kind of kept up with it. And and the thing is, he's kind of like, it's kind of like Dave Matthews for people that aren't full of their own shit. What it is. So it's John Mayer is Dave Matthews for people that go to work and actually pay their bills and shit. But he's also a really prolific guitar player. Like he does blues. He did a show where he did an acoustic set, he did an all blues set, and did his normal stuff like what you just heard. And it was like, it's pretty cool. Like I dug that. I dug the idea that he was able to embrace all those different genres and pull them off convincingly, I might add. These weren't just hack versions of stuff. Like I've known some pretty hardcore blues musicians, and I was like, what do you think of this? And they're like, guy's good. You know, like he really, like you can tell when someone's playing something because they like it versus playing something because they feel it. You know, and there's a lot of musicians out there, myself included, who have been dropped into a project that that they like it, they're enthusiastic about it, but it's not who they are. And if you compare it to other stuff they've done, maybe it's not as intense or as connective as other stuff they've done. You know, like anytime you listen to me play black metal, like I'm good at it. I like black metal, but it doesn't. I can't swing in it in a certain way. Like it's. I love it and I'm good at it and it's fun, but it's not the same as giving me a good solid meaty like a death grind or a grindcore kind of vibe. For some reason, I don't. You can tell it's not my favorite thing, in my opinion. And I know there's guitar players out there that fall into that category and stuff. It's interesting. Troy says, Fall Out Boy had John Mayer do the Van Halen solo on their cover of Beat It. I gained a lot of respect for Mayer as a guitarist after that. I didn't know that happened. That's pretty cool. Like, see, that gives you an idea of his range. Acoustic, blues, you know, guitar-driven rock, and Van Halen solos, apparently. It's like, Jesus. What else is that guy doing? Crazy. Crazy. But that's the thing. Like, a John Mayer song can stand right up to a Dying Fetus song. And I think they're both musically valid, and I dig them both. And I don't really know what that says about me, except that I came from a very musically diverse background. I happen to like one thing more than anything else. One of the only people that are doing music these days that I can point to and say, I think that guy had a similar upbringing to me. Is Hank Williams III. Okay, grew up in a country household, dad and grandpa, great country musicians. He's also a country musician, but he's also a metal dude. He was in Superjoint Ritual for a long time, and you can just tell the dude listens to all kinds of shit. It's evident. It's obvious. I think we need more people like that. There needs to be less like I'm this. Like who cares? You're you. I'm not Deeds of Flesh. I'm not Napalm Death. I am not death metal. I'm Jim. I'm Grindhead Jim. That's who I am. And whatever form that takes is valid. And I think that's the main reason I brought up this subject in the first place is that there's a what's the word I'm looking for? There's a certain kind of movement that has always existed, which seeks to separate and lift and push down different interests in arts musically for the sake of your own mental capacity. Like, I speak, of course, of the word poser. Poser. Got thrown around a lot, especially by Exodus and a lot of the Bay Area bands. They would go to like, hair metal shows and beat up these guys. Like, poser, you white leather jacket motherfucker, and start beating them up. And it's like, well, stylistically, they're different than you. They're not trying to be you. They're trying to be them. I never understood that. Not really. Like, if Poison wants to be Poison, like, no one will ever accuse Poison of being Metallica. Ever. And vice versa, and rightfully so. Visually and artistically and audibly, not even close. Especially in their heyday. Like when Poison was getting really big in the late 80s, when Metallica was getting really big in the late 80s, like, don't need nothing but a good time versus I mean, come on, like that's totally different. Totally different. Like that's but yet there was this kind of threatened that's not metal. You're a poser. And I don't dig that, man. I don't. I never did. And then black metal had true, but spelled with the U as a V. True black metal, death, cult. Like, give me a break. Come on. Like, if you write good music, you don't need to record it on grandma's tape deck for me to appreciate its artistic integrity. Spend $50 and go into a studio. You know what I mean? Like, give me a break, dude. Like, I'll never understand that shit where you intentionally like shit all over your music for the hope of some sort of artistic integrity or validity. I'll never ever understand that. And I struggle. There are some bands I want to sound super dirty because that style definitely does lean itself to it. Black metal is not one of them, to a certain degree. But there's other things I really want to be super clear. And I can appreciate a little bit of everything, whereas you got like an Nathrak where the production is undeniably clear, but each tone can be dirtied up. So like the guitar has some really dirty vibes to it. The vocals have a lot of distortion in them. The drums are clean and crisp, but it's like the way it's mixed together, the way it's mastered, it's a little bit of equal parts of clean and dirty. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, there's no blueprint that says if you play this style of music, you have to have this. People will try to tell you that there is, but there isn't. There isn't. You don't have to use an HM2 with everything turned all the way up to be death metal. It helps, but you don't have to. You don't have to sound like a vomited up cassette tape from the 70s to be black metal. You don't need to sound like a Fisher Price keyboard to be pop. Like that none of that is true. there's been plenty of bands that are undeniably top 40 pop that sound nothing like what you would consider pop to be. JT says, hated glam and hair metal back in the day, had that same elitist attitude. Now I enjoy it all. It might just be developing a sense of self in your youth and identifying with the scene so much that it becomes a lifestyle. And whenever that lifestyle feels intruded upon, there's a sense of loyalty to defend it. Yeah, I get that. And, Seba Lee brings up a great point. Pantera used to be glam. I would argue that they were more of a Van Halen clone, which I would not consider glam, though it has glam visual elements to it. Pantera started off as very 80s rock, but they had a lot of thrash elements in there. I think they struggled with a style. I think they struggled with an identity. And then by the end of the 80s, they were like, why are we wearing all this crazy crap on stage? And thrash almonds, there you go. Yeah, those captions are awesome, dude. And I feel like, I honestly believe that their evolution was fairly natural. In as much as I think Phil, when they started writing with Phil was able to say, okay, look, I love this stuff we're doing, but I think we can do something more with the talent in this band. And right. Daryl and Phil probably had a night, and then they talked to Vinny about it and talked to Rex about it. And they're like, yeah, we could try that. And they started, because if you look at like what they were writing in the late 80s before Cowboys from Hell was written, and then you look at Cowboys from Hell, and then you look at Vulgar Display, it just it's a natural progression. It's a natural progression. Whereas, had they gone from, Breaking the Night or whatever it's called to, Far Beyond Driven or, Great Southern Trendkill, it's like, fuck. But JT, I want to come back to your point, that whole loyalty to your genre. Like, I get that. And I think that comes from, I think it's dead on in as much as we talked about that in the last episode where it was like, these are my people. And you feel like you don't want to be associated with something that you don't identify with. When someone says, well, Poison is metal. No, it's not. This is metal. I am metal. And I do think it's an emotional immaturity thing. Absolutely. But there are some people that never grew out of that. I'm sure you know a few people in your personal and professional life that never grew out of that, and I know I do. And it's just, at some point you're like, fucking Jesus Christ, like, how many calories do you burn all day carrying all that baggage around? Like, good music is good music. Like, just fucking stop worrying about your dick and just listen to music. That's what a lot of it boils down to. It's like, what do you mean my dick's small? Like, that's really any argument anyone from like 13 to like 30 has usually can be traced back to a concern that there's a perception that their dick might be small. You can dispute me if you want to, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. If you're a guy, that is. If you're a guy. Females and any other gender identifiers probably don't feel that way. Because if they do own a dick, they're just like, look at this. Here it is. You can look at it and then put it away. Or not. Or they don't care, which is probably the right move. Not caring. Doesn't matter. I did start watching The Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, The Metal Years. I almost got to the end of it and I got tired. And who was that said it? It wasn't Lemmy, although he was in it. Oh, it was Dave Mustaine. He said, not how big your pencil is how you write your name. And I was like, and I'd heard him say that a bunch of times. I've seen that movie a bunch of times. But geez, think about that. It's not how big your pencil is how you sign your name. Guy's got a fucking point. And he had just gotten clean after that, so no, it wasn't the drugs talking. or at least he was clean at the time. You could tell he was all right. Because you can tell when Dave Mustaine's off his shit. Like he's like, rock the vote. You know. But as we are wont to do here, I have digressed a bit. So I don't have a script for these things. I don't have an outline. Nothing. I just go, here's what I want to talk about, and I want to start talking. Because every time I've ever tried to have a scripted conversation, it goes off the rails, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. Because I'd rather it be real and live and human and have you guys interject so we can just have that flexibility to kind of go around and do our thing. Do our thing. This is Life of Agony. They are coming out with a new record this year. And it's another story. They're one of their first concept records since their first one. And at the end of River Runs Red, the kid slices his wrist. His mom discovers him, and you are left to believe that the kid's dead. Well, the concept for this new record apparently is, what if he lived? What if that person lived? And I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, that's a really cool concept. I hope they can pull it off. On the other hand, I'm like, to me, that takes away from some of the bite of the message of that record. Although I would argue that the message of that record is pretty bleak. So, not such a bad thing, I don't know where I stand on that. If you guys have an opinion, let me know. I'm curious. Let me know. I love Life of Agony. There's maybe one album they've done where I was like, really? And that was the third one, Soul Searching Sun. There's like one good song on there, and the rest of it I'm like, eh. And you could tell that Keith wanted to leave, so he did. And then when he went off and kind of explored, himself, came back, and also came out as transgendered, and is now Mina. I think the band's a lot better than it's ever been, because there's a lot. You can tell there's just less issues. And what's interesting now, there's 2 women and 2 men in that band. And one of the women is the drummer. She's awesome. So I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm curious to see what this new record's gonna bring. Especially given they want to kind of explore these 25-year-old themes. Yeah, 25-year-old themes. And it should be cool. And they early on had a lot of synth in their hardcore band, which is like, what? Yes, they had synth in their hardcore, metalized hardcore punk band. See, there was a reason I brought it up. Y'all thought I was being random. Mm-mm. Nope. Synth in them thar hills. Yes. There's a lot of influence from like Depeche Mode and Tears for Fears in the early Life of Agony stuff. They were trying to set themselves apart, but still be hardcore. And no one messed with them. They were good. They're a bunch of art students that liked punk. Not a thing wrong with that at all. Nothing wrong with it at all. And in death metal, you can't use synth unless it's for an intro that has nothing to do with anything. Unless you're Lost Soul, and then you're basically a black metal band that has death metal riffs in it and low vocals. So basically, it's a death metal band with synth in it. And the first album, especially, had a lot of synthesizer in it, but it worked. They just started doing it. They're like, why can black metal bands do it and we can't? So they did it. It's really good. Second album, I would argue, is a bit better. But Lost Soul, like, just came out of nowhere. Like, we're from Poland. We play brutal death metal, and we have a keyboard player. If you don't like that, we'll crush your skull. That was kind of their thing. So there was this thing where people were just trying so hard to be unique. Some of them were trying things that shouldn't have worked, and it did. And yet there were others who were trying things that should have worked, but ultimately did not. For me, the rap metal crossover, a really rough one to pull off. There's only a few that actually pulled it off. with any degree of sanity or consistency. I say Stuck Mojo did a good job. Early Korn had some hip hop influence, but Korn was undeniably Korn. Limp Bizkit, that was a poorly put together metal band that had a DJ and a guy who really wanted to be a hip hop rapper but knew he'd get beat up. And they went for it. And they made a lot of money and wrote some decent songs, but ultimately that band was always too many things, too many cooks, to really have a core that would last. I think that's honestly, I think that's where Limp Bizkit failed. Was its inability to have any sort of a core, a heart. And instead, they instead of having a heart, they had a face, and that face was Fred Durst, and he's an asshole. So Troy says, and then power metal came along, and everyone in the genre was like, "Fuck yeah, we use synths." Like, yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a whole other thing, man. You know, it's absolutely true, and it's valid. There's a ton of great bands that use synths, but people were like, we don't use synths, And then you had like early death metal bands that were like, we don't use vocal synthesizers. Most notably Cannibal Corpse, and like from the second Deicide record on, you're like, we don't use any vocal effects, goddammit. Roar. I understand why that's, because in the early days, it was difficult to believe that a human voice could naturally sound like this. And it was something that no one knew you could do in the mainstream. So when they heard that, they're like,
what is this? This is insane. They have to be doing something with the tape or something.
And some people did. Not many, but some people did. I always found it a bit suspect that the first Morbid Angel record had a really high register vocal. And then the second one and the third one, it was a low register. Now, granted, Dave Vincent can actually do that with his voice. At least he could at the time, without question. Like, he clearly could do it. But to the layman, you're like, how can you go from doing this to doing this, or whatever? Yeah, a lot of guys thought that was the vocal style. I'm into death metal. That's not it at all. Like, next time, Gadget. Yeah, that's different. That's for another time. Next time. That's but it's fun. I used to be able to do the cat. I can't do the cat anymore. I don't know why. People do, or the Fat Albert voice, the which some guys did use. Dave Ingram from Benediction. Look it up. Look up anything he did in Benediction. And Fat Albert. I'm serious. I wish I was kidding. Every time I play certain things for people, they're like, what? And they thought that was passable? Yeah. What's weird about that particular connection, Dave Ingram and Benediction had been hired to replace Barney Greenway, who was then moving to Napalm Death. And his vocal style was a little bit different in Benediction. And they wanted Dave to sound close to what Barney was doing. And it ended up sounding like this, which is pretty close if you listen to the first record. Pretty close. Then, eventually, Dave leaves Benediction, joins Bolt Thrower, and he's got a death metal voice like this. And you're like, you mean he could do that the whole time? And they're making him do the Fat Albert voice? And you're like, what? Why would you willingly go for the Fat Albert voice when you could have had that? Like, why? And then they get the cat, Dave, that's in Ananathrak. He's in Benediction, has been for years. And he does like somewhere in between a regular death metal voice and the Dave Ingram Fat Albert voice, somewhere in the middle. And that sounds cool. And it's undeniably Benediction, which is really why they're doing it. They want the vocals to sound different. And without a doubt, it definitely sounded different. Yeah, and you're like, okay. I love Benediction, man, but the vocals make me laugh. It's like, the dreams you dread, yeah. And you're like, all right, dude. All right. You do you, bro. What do you mean? It sounds like Grover from Sesame Street Metal. I would do kind of metal. It'd be Grover. I think he'd be a power metal guy. Near, far. Super Grover. I can't believe I just fucking said that shit out loud. I'm not alone with your parents. She's just like, I know she's at her computer going, the fuck is he doing now? Those of you who know me long enough, you know I've done Stranger Things for a laugh. JT knows that. Troy definitely knows that. Well, this is a good song. This is a great song. But yeah. There you go, guys. You got the Transformers, the movie soundtrack, kind of diverges everything that I know and how it kind of informed my ideas about the genre and informed my ideas about what is and is not metal, what was valid, what wasn't valid, which ultimately turned into everything is valid. And although I might have hidden some of my tastes from some of my more passionate metalhead friends over the years, it got to a point in my 30s where I'm like, fuck you. I just showed everything. Like I was telling JT last night, when we were on tour in the US, when I had my headphones on, all I was listening to was comedy records. I was listening to the Transformer soundtrack, movie scores, Johnny Cash, John Mayer, that kind of stuff. Tears for Fears. No, almost no metal at all. Because when you're doing metal, when you're living metal, 24 hours a day for a month or more, you want to get away from it. So, like, I'd be sitting in the van, just sitting on the uncomfortable ass cooler, watching Matt Harvey from Exhumed sleep. Yeah, that was a fun month. I think we got hotels like one night. The rest of it, if we did stop and sleep, it was like somebody's house. It was always a floor, never a bed, except for I think San Diego. I managed to get a bed, which is cool. But then, like the next night, we stopped at a hotel and everyone was sleeping like in the room, and because everyone was all like stretched out or whatever, a lot of us opted to. Did we? Did we? And then the rest of us opted to sleep in the van because the van you had more space to yourself to try and get some sleep, but you never really got a full night's sleep in that shit. Which was always interesting. So I know we stopped in like LA. There was a hotel. I don't think we got a hotel in Arizona, did we? Didn't we just go straight driving as far as we could and got a hotel? I don't remember. Like the getting from Arizona to San Antonio is a fucking blur, dude. Fucking blur. Like I kind of remember a couple things, kinda, and then we ended up sleeping at Hod's place, and then came back over to Austin and stuff. Yeah, but that wasn't a hotel though. Ed's place in Pittsburgh was the shit though. And that's when my mom came up and gave me potato chips. Incidentally, that was the last time I ever saw her in person. True story. But that was a really good afternoon. It was really, really cool. Really cool. And I'm trying to think where else. What got to? All right, so because we went from Arizona to San Antonio. I know we slept. We had to have gotten a hotel in Arizona or something along the way. We didn't know anyone up there. You guys stayed at a hotel, and that's right. That's what it was. You guys stayed in a hotel in Arizona. We started driving. Yeah. We started driving, and we had the rotation going, which I was always jealous of. And then we get to Texas, slept at Hod's place, went into Austin, played. Hod dropped off the tour in 102-degree heat, pitch black night at 3 in the morning. And we ended up having a place we could stay that night, which was nice. And we slept on the floors in that place, got up and went to Kansas City. And then we went straight to Chicago from there. And you guys stayed with the Cyanide guys. And then I went home. And then we all met up with the gear and everything in Chicago. And off to Pittsburgh we went. In Pittsburgh, we stayed at Ed's place. And then we started heading south. No, we went to New York after that. Yes, we were almost too late for, yes. And I have video from that. Someone took video of me playing drums on one of the tunes, and you could tell it was all energy. It was like, we're gonna get through this. So then Pittsburgh to New York, and then down through. It was almost like we went. No, wait. It was Chicago. We went up to New York and then came back down to Pittsburgh. And then from Pittsburgh down through, right? No. It was Pittsburgh, New York. No, Pittsburgh, Allentown, New York, and that long-ass drive down to not Arkansas. But would have been Arkansas, I think. Did we do New Jersey? Because we did Pittsburgh, we did Allentown in that order. We went up to do Chinatown, New York proper, then we came back down, and we did Indiana. We went to Indianapolis from there, and then from there was going to be the ending of the thing in Texas, which those shows got canceled for whatever stupid ass reason at the time, and we ended up just ending the tour in Indianapolis, which was a good place to end it on. A good show. It's fun. It was close enough to everyone's able to drive where they had to go. And we just went. We just left. It was cool. I enjoyed it. And that's how synthpop fits into metal. Jim's Tour Stories with JT Corp. I love it.